Ramona Shelburne of the Worldwide Leader in Sports joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Ramona?
Good. How are you guys?
I'm great. So let's get into this thing. Where do you stand on the question of whether the Boogie Cousins trade that did not go down for the Lakers was the final straw? Is that the case, Ramona?
No, I actually don't think it was. I think Jeannie had decided to do this by the middle of last week. From what I've heard, she was going to go to All-Star break, and she decided not to. She decided to stay here in Los Angeles and send her brother Joey to All-Star instead, because she had decided at that point, okay, I've made my decision. This is what's going to happen. Now I need to just execute it. And so the Boogie Cousins stuff happened over the weekend, and yes, there was some bad feeling about how it was handled. Not necessarily that they didn't get him, but the lack of communication with Irvin and with Jeannie, and just the way that went, right? But I think she'd already made the decision by like Wednesday or Thursday of last week.
So now that the Magic's there and bringing in Rob Pelinka to be the general manager, are there Kobe Bryant fingerprints on this too?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, you don't have, just go on Instagram. Jeannie Buss and Linda Rambis went and met with Kobe Bryant, and there's a selfie of them on Jeannie's page. I mean, I think, you see them talking to him. You see Magic talking to him. Magic even went on, when he car washed in Bristol last week, he told everyone he went and talked to him. And so, I think Rob and Kobe are like brothers. I mean, they're really close, and Rob was ready to make this transition back to being a part of a team as opposed to negotiating with teams. And he's a strong negotiator, a strong personality. And also, I think he, in a way, will fit well with Magic. Magic's, front and center. He wants to be the guy in the room. He could stand there talking to people for 3 hours, and he could work that room for 3 hours, where after 30 minutes Rob wants out of that room, right? That the difference in personalities. If you can, Rob's kind of a detail guy, he's more of a blocking and tackling guy, and I think that will fit well with as a contrast to Magic's personality.
Ramona Shelburne joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So will this work? And by that I mean, free agents now that when the summer hits, is this a better situation, you think, for the Lakers in the world where they now have to sell themselves?
Yeah, look, I think it's better, but will it work? Is another question, right? So Magic has been in some of these free agent meetings. This isn't the first time he's been in these meetings. So it's not his mere presence and charm and the fact that he's Magic that's going to matter. It's the fact that they'll have a different type of front office, that they won't have Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss running things anymore. And, those guys, I mean, I don't know. Have you spent time with Mitch Kupchak, personality-wise? How would you describe him? If you know, right? Mm-hmm. I'll describe him, okay? We would sit in the press room. He was always there and available in the press room at Staples Center. You could just go up to him while we're all eating dinner before games. And I would sit with Mitch. And it was just to have an 8-minute conversation was hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not he's not that personality. And we would have meetings with free agents. It was, I've heard stories of how poorly the LaMarcus Aldridge first presentation was, where he just doesn't. He doesn't have a slickness to him where if you're a free agent listening to him, you don't necessarily feel like this guy has a plan that he wants to even share with you. Whereas a team like Phoenix came in there and says, oh, we're going to trade for Tyson Chandler. We're going to do all this. They had all of these ways that they were going to set up the team. Whereas Mitch is so close to the vest, he can't even go there with a prospective free agent. So will it help? Yes. Will it be better? Yes. Will it work in the long run? I don't know. I don't know that players the young guys these days, I don't know that Magic means the same thing to them he means to people of our generation.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. There is still the allure of Los Angeles, right? And there is, I guess, a young nucleus. Do we call it that for the Lakers?
For that. Honestly, why the Lakers haven't gotten people in free agency? I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but they don't have a team yet, right?
Right.
They don't have talent yet. People go where they can win. People go where they're going to thrive, and the Lakers have a bunch of kids. But I think they need to get first you look at Houston. they had nothing. They were asset acquiring, right? They're in the asset acquisition mode for a long time.
Right.
Finally, they get James Harden. But it takes a couple of years for James Harden to become what he is right now. And now you can walk into a room and people would want to play with him, right? Like Eric Gordon would want to play with him. Dwight Howard wanted to play with him. But obviously that didn't work out. But, like, it's not that Houston is this great city that everyone wants to go to. It's that you have a player that people want to go to play with. And Lakers don't have that yet. Like, they're not there yet.
But if you could peg, Ramona, somebody who's currently on the roster that could become that, who would that person be?
Honestly, like right now, the guy that people want to not play with, but they want to play for is Luke Walton. I would say Brandon Ingram is the one guy out of this group that they have that I think could become something, but is he Tayshaun Prince or is he Kevin Durant? I think right now, from what we've seen, he's a little closer to like Tayshaun Prince someday. And that's not a superstar. That's just a player that you want on your team when you want to win. Like, Tayshaun's obviously a really good player. He's like 19. Like, we don't know anything yet. And I think there are a couple. They need one star before they can get the second star, and that's why those two contracts they signed this past offseason were so crippling and so bad for this franchise, because they actually had two max salary spots, but because they gave away all of their money to Timofey Mozgov and Luol Deng, they really only have one, and it's hard to convince one guy, like let's say a Gordon Hayward or Blake Griffin, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, whether you're going to trade for him or whether you're going to sign him as a free agent. It's really hard to convince just one guy to come on his own. Mm-hmm. It's much easier to convince two guys.
Ramona Shelburne joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So I guess just hearing from what you just said, do you think the Lakers should have pulled the trigger on Boogie Cousins if there really was a trade involving Brandon Ingram for him?
Yeah, I think there was, from what I've heard, that there was a lot of people in the Laker front office wanted to do that trade, and just because they need a star. Like, one star makes it, you can get more stars. But there was some serious questions about how would Boogie play in LA? How would he thrive? Like, he's a small town guy. He's from Mobile, Alabama. Like, I don't know that he's a big city guy or wants to be a big city guy. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't, just because you're from a small town doesn't mean you have to stay there all the time. But there's certain people who are much more comfortable in that environment. And, like, I would say he's far more comfortable in a New Orleans than he is in the spotlight of LA.
Couple more minutes left with Ramona Shelburne here on the Rich Eisen Show from the worldwide leader in sports. All right, so what's going to happen trade deadline day? Crystal ball it for me. Did the Celtics make a move? Does Jimmy Butler go somewhere? Does Carmelo drop his no trade for somebody? What do you got for me?
Yeah, I feel like Carmelo's going to stay. There's just not a market for him right now, and the two teams that would be interested in him, I think they're losing interest, right? It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and for them right now when they're trying to win, like the Clippers and the Cavs, right? And so I definitely think there's going to be more moves, and like Boston feels good. They're in the second spot. They've been winning. They've been playing well, but at some point you see what Toronto did. You see Washington kind of sitting on the sidelines, like. Those two teams, like Washington and Boston, I feel like are going to do something because it's an arms race. You got to keep up with Toronto after they got Serge Ibaka, and you got to continue to add to your group. I don't think Jimmy Butler moves. I don't think they're ready to trade him, and I don't know if they will eventually even get to that point. But I do think there's going to be some surprising names that move, like guys much like the Boogie Cousins trade, where Sacramento was more motivated to move him because they didn't want to commit $200 million to him. There's guys who are up for extensions, very lucrative extensions, where teams have to make that choice right now. Okay, let's trade him now before we have to pay him a lot.
Ramona, thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Come on the studio next time, okay?
I know, I will. I'm sorry. They got me chained to the green room in the set today.
Look, I understand. It's trade deadline day, and there's sports centers coast to coast. I understand that you're
I know, but next time I will be there. You guys send a car and everything. I know you. You see me. I'll be there. I just couldn't get away and get from downtown to where you guys were today.
Good to speak with you. Thanks for joining. That's Ramona Shelburne.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.